Juan Soto has waved the green flag on this offseason, and the Reds are just trying to get their engine started.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Reds. We are your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr. We have a combined 14 years almost, Jeff. Can you believe that, of experience covering the Cincinnati Reds in podcast form? We love the Cincinnati Reds. We love baseball. We have taken our love of the game and our love for this team, and we have turned that into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day. And on today's podcast, we are going to take a look at the fallout from Juan Soto's $750 million. That's a billion with a B, $1 billion deal with the New York Mets. We're going to discuss what it means for the Reds as they try and navigate the rest of this year's free agency period. There's trade rumors. There's trade rumors here. They're there. They're everywhere. And the Reds are in the middle of more than one of them. We are going to take a look at what the rumors are and what they've been linked to. And we're going to wrap things up today with a little words of wisdom from Terry Francona. In fact, he has a plan for the starting pitchers heading into 2025 that has Jeff, fired up. We're going to discuss that a little bit later in today's show that's brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 back in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started today. And where we are going to get started, Jeff Carr, is with the almost $1 billion man, 765 over 15 years. Juan Soto signs with the New York Mets. That shoe has dropped. What does it mean for everybody else?
So as soon as he signed, there were a couple of other announcements. Tyler O'Neill signed with the Baltimore Orioles. He's off the board. Michael Conforto signed with the Dodgers for 1 year, $17 million, $8.5 million of that deferred. Just a ridiculous contract. They're no longer the Los Angeles Dodgers. They are the Los Angeles Deferred Dodgers. We are now calling them the LADD, the Lads, the Los Angeles Deferred Dodgers. It's ridiculous what they're doing. And reports are that the Dodgers also want to reunite with Teoscar Hernandez and that there is mutual interest there. So what all that means, and by the way, you better believe that after losing out on Juan Soto, the Yankees are going to be on the phone probably already with Anthony Santander. So if the Reds want one of those top guys, they're going to have to get into a bidding war with the top spenders in the league outside of the Mets that have already spent all of their money. So with that being said, free agency looks like it's going to be brutal for the Reds to get into. We heard Nick Krall say, or not heard, we read it in Mark Sheldon's article on Reds.com, that he has the flexibility to go improve this roster. Does that mean that they have the flexibility to sign Teoscar Hernandez or Anthony Santander away from the Yankees and the Dodgers? Maybe not, but that's what the landscape now is.
I'm resigning myself to the fact that Anthony Santander probably goes to New York. The Dodgers were ready to give $700+ million to Juan Soto. They had at one point, I think, offered a 16-year contract, and the money didn't just quite add up to Soto's
16 years, 760. He's literally making $5 million more and 1 year less to go to Queens.
So for me, clearly the Yankees have money to burn now. They have a lot of needs and a lot of money to fill those needs. One of those needs, of course, is outfield now, and I just don't see how anybody else is going to compete with what the Yankees have in their hot little hands right now to go fill those needs. So this is a problem, Jeff. This is a big problem. This contract, I think, is finally the contract that has broken baseball. We've been talking about it. We've been talking about what things will look like, what it's going to be like when we get to a new collective bargaining agreement. There is 1,000% going to be a work stoppage now. You look at this Juan Soto deal, Jeff, he's making more money than the net worth of a 7, right? Is it 7 owners in baseball right now? that's not going to stand. These lower revenue, lower net worth owners already did not like Stephen Cohen because of the things he pulled when he bought this team, pushing payroll up to nearly $500 million, all of those things. They already didn't like him. They hate him now because there is no way that they can allow this game to continue where they're paying players more than the net worth of the owners. There's big trouble on the horizon now, sir.
Well, and this is just more of an example as to why Major League Baseball is rivaling like the English Premier League and like soccer and all that stuff when it comes to the haves and the have-nots, because there is no salary cap when it comes to soccer, football, whatever you call it, internationally, and there's no salary cap when it comes to baseball. And even with this deal, I read something about this too, Steve, is that the median salary and the lower salaries and stuff like that in baseball still mean that baseball players do not have like the best of times. Like you have the haves and the have-nots between Juan Soto and Shohei Ohtani and all those guys, and then you have all the rookie players that are making like literally what's that? Is that 10 times? Literally 10 times less than Juan Soto. So you've got such a gap between the top and the bottom now that when you're getting to that collective bargaining agreement here in a couple of years, there's going to be so much that is said about this because, I mean, Juan Soto's the big contract this year. What's the big contract next year? What's the big contract 2 years from now? Heck, if Juan Soto is making this and if Elly De La Cruz gets as good as we think he can get, what's Elly De La Cruz going to make in like 5 years? Because what are we talking about? $1 billion player at that point? The owners are not going to stand for that sort of a thing.
No, they're not. And poor Elly, because if he does become that guy, and I really think he has, you know, if I were having to bet on it, let's say FanDuel had something for me on that. I think that Elly gets there. I think Elly is going to become one of those guys. But bummer for him, the timing, because the rules are going to change. And his good friend, Juan Soto, is going to be the guy that kind of forced that change to happen, because there's no way this can continue unchecked. The game's going to bankrupt itself or have to price everything at a point where people are just not going to be able to go anymore.
And I think too that like for everybody that's saying, well, see, this Juan Soto deal is just more evidence that free agency is just going insane. I would say I don't even know that I look at Juan Soto's. I look at the crazy deal that the Dodgers gave Michael Conforto. Yes, it's 1 year, but they gave him 1 year, $17 million. Spotrac had him around like $6 million. And I'm not saying the spot track is always 100% correct, but they're not that far off most of the time, especially not $11 million off. Part of that's the deferred money. And I also look at the Reds giving Nick Martinez $21 million in the qualifying offer, because if he would have gotten that on the free agent market, the pitching market would have been crazy. So there's so many different numbers that just tell you the money is almost monopoly money at this point when it comes to Major League Baseball. So hopefully Nick Krall's got a little bit of monopoly money to spend on some free agents, or else he's not going to get any free agent outfielders. But I kind of want to look a little bit deeper at this contract, Steve, because there were some folks, and I saw that Mo Egger had a tweet about like how, you know, Reds payroll compared to Juan Soto and all this other stuff. Spot Track goes back, and I'm counting the estimated payroll being the same for 2025 as it was for 2024. So I'm counting that. You would go 2025 to 2011, 15 years. Spot Track can go back and tell you the payroll that the Reds, the adjusted total payroll is what I'm looking at. So if there's a different number that everybody else talks about payroll, then whatever. I'm looking at the adjusted total payroll for the last 15 years. If you compare that to what Juan Soto is going to make over his next 15 years, Juan Soto will make half as much as every single Reds player that they have paid for the last 15 years. They paid a total of $1.5 billion over the last 15 years in payroll. And Juan Soto is going to make half of that by himself. Like, I get it. We kind of joked a little bit. The Reds should go get Juan Soto. This is just the extent of how never going to happen it was that Juan Soto was ever going to come to Cincinnati.
Yeah, this is really it's kind of a shocking, stark, in-your-face presentation of, like you said, the haves and the have-nots. Because you look at this contract, Jeff. This contract, he's making more money than the Reds spent on the entire roster for the last 7 seasons.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a minute. 7 seasons. He's making more than that. So for me, this is I'm just going to enjoy baseball while we have it over the next couple of years, because we talk about hating blackouts. There's blackout coming, and it's going to last an entire year.
It's going to be crazy, but now that he has signed, the outfield market is just rushing by, and the Reds really need to do something to catch up, because does this mean that the Reds are now more likely to make a trade to get their outfielder? Well, there have been a few rumors surrounding the Reds and making a trade. We'll talk about those coming up next.
Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off site-wide deals during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. With 5 generations of experience, Omaha Steaks consistently delivers the world's best steak experience, and their gifting experts have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and more, save 50% off site-wide during the cyber sale at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code MLB and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at Omaha, OMAHA, steaks.com, and an extra $30 off with promo code MLB. Minimum purchase may apply.
We are talking about the Cincinnati Reds here today, all day, every week, every month, all year long. Make sure you subscribe to get at least 30 minutes of Red Stock in your feed every single day. All right, so with the big signing of Juan Soto and a couple of other free agent outfielders off the market, the focus might be turning to the trade market, because the Reds have been linked to a couple of different trades. And I want to talk about the Garrett Crochet trade rumors in just a minute, but there was a new one that happened. I believe it was on Friday that the rumors came out, or maybe it was Saturday, but it was over the weekend, that the Reds and the Guardians have linked up in trade discussions for outfielder Lane Thomas and first base / DH Josh Naylor. Now, it's very intriguing to me that both players are involved. Lane Thomas obviously fills a need. Lane Thomas is a good glove and a good bat and pretty good on the base paths as well. He would be a legitimate center fielder. He's the guy that you put him in center field, and you tell TJ Friedl, okay, I think you could probably stay a little bit healthier on the corners, so we're going to put you at right or left or whichever one. But Lane Thomas plays every day for you. And then on the other side of this, the Josh Naylor bit is interesting to me, because he's a power guy, had over 30 homers for the Guardians last year, but all total, his OPS was under 800. So it's not as if he was just hitting every extra base hit out there. It was homer or nothing. For him, he's kind of the guy that I hope CES is this year.
You know, looking at this deal, and I'm not necessarily opposed. Lane Thomas has a fit with this team, and I would ask you this. I see him as a platoon, and a platoon with TJ Friedl. If you look at his numbers last year overall, they were not good, Jeff. His overall batting average, his overall slugging, everything overall, not that great. He was, an OPS plus of 101, 1% better than league average. So not a world beater. But if you break it down, if you look at his splits against the left-handers, Jeff, 302, 386, 492. So you platoon him with TJ Friedl and let Friedl hit against the righties, or at least you swap them out in center field, lefty righty. They're both going to play in every game. That's just the way of the beast now. But you look at that, that's a pretty darn good baseball player if you platoon him with TJ Friedl. So I don't mind that. Sure. And I think you're right. I think that Josh Naylor really is kind of CES-ish, like what you would expect. So I don't know, but this is what I know. We don't know if CES can be Josh Naylor. We don't.
Right.
So if you go and get him, you've now got some measure of certainty, some measure of movement away from the hope that we've been talking about for a while now with these guys coming off of injury. So while we can take what we hope CES is and then look and say, well, I don't know if they need Josh Naylor because these could be the same guys and they could do the same things. They could, we hope. But if we don't want to hope, if we want certainty, you bring in Josh Naylor.
I kind of wonder a little bit too, like, is this something that the Reds really are buying into the worry on Noelvi Marte? Because they'll have Candelario back. Candelario can play first or third. And then you add a guy like Josh Naylor. This then gives you the insurance for CES, because it kind of felt like they were adding Candelario as insurance for Marte or CES. But if they don't believe that it's even necessary to worry about insurance, the plan is Candelario at third, then are they searching for that first baseman to be more of insurance for CES? And then you could play him at DH and stuff like that. Because for a guy that hit 31 home runs in Cleveland last year, you don't have to squint that hard to see him hitting 40 at Great American Ballpark. So you slot him in the fourth spot in the lineup and you're feeling pretty good about that. Then it just makes me wonder a little bit, like, are they more worried about CES than they're letting on? This kind of feels like they're almost assured to put Noelvi Marte in AAA for opening day, and then CES could be a rotational guy.
Yeah, I think this is more. I think you're right. I think this would be more about Noelvi than it is about CES, because I agree with just how you presented that just now. I think that Jeimer Candelario's the opening day third baseman. I said that a few weeks back. I can't remember if it was with you or Tim Daniel. I was talking to somebody about that, and I'm like, no, Jeimer Candelario is going to be the opening day third baseman, and it's a little hot takey right now, but I really think
there's totally not a bottle bet on that at all right now.
Right. There is in fact my bottle of Pappy bet on that. I'm glad you remember.
No, not a bottle. Hey.
but for me, it's Jeimer, and I think Noelvi starts in AAA. If you did this deal, there's room and at bats for CES and Naylor both on the same team. You interchange them at DH first base. It's fine. It's not a problem. The trade of Jonathan India freed that up. It created an opportunity for you to go out and get a guy that's going to get a lot of at bats at DH. And I think the Reds probably need to do that. I like this deal, Jeff. On its surface, we haven't talked about what they would have to give up though to make this happen. Whatever trade they make is going to be painful. Because the free agent market is what it is, there's going to be a lot more teams looking to fill holes through the trade market, which is going to drive up the price there as well. The Reds have prospect capital, and I think we finally reached the point, Jeff, where we can no longer say that we're not willing to spend it. We've been.
They're going to have to if they want to get better.
To spend it, they have to spend it, and they've got it. They just have to be smart.
And I think that's kind of the important thing. And I love not necessarily each rumor in itself in a vacuum, but I love that the Reds are involved in all these rumors, because coming into the offseason, Nick Krall could not have a straightforward view of what he needed to do. He had to get creative. There's some things that he has to do. And while rumors are not news and the Reds have not made these trades yet, it's good to know that there are people linking them in some way, shape, or form. And kind of a way of segueing a rumor about the Guardians to a rumor about the White Sox, we mentioned Garrett Crochet last week and how we thought it was strange that the Reds we're happy that they're involved in rumors, but we're strange that they're involved in this rumor, because this rumor will cost even more as far as prospect capital goes than a trade for Naylor and Lane Thomas. But I find this interesting, Steve, because there are conflicting reports on the rumors. Red Sox beat reporter Chris Cotillo says that the Red Sox are in on Garrett Crochet, but that the Reds are favored. This was the exact tweet. The Red Sox are in on Garrett Crochet, but he believes that the Reds are favored to land him. Meanwhile, you have Gordon Wittenmeyer saying, yes, Nick Krall called the White Sox and he didn't like what he heard and they haven't talked since. So as in, one says they're favored, the other says they're not even talking to the White Sox anymore about this trade idea. The winter meetings are great again, baby. The rumors are flying. I love this.
This has the potential to make Gordon Wittenmeyer Bob Nightingale. depending on how this breaks down. If the Reds now pull off a trade for Garrett Crochet, he is now Bob Nightingale forevermore. Like anything he has to say, we're going to expect the opposite.
Not Bobby Nightingale, Bob Nightingale.
Bob
Yeah.
Nightingale. Yeah. Bob has a propensity for saying one thing and something else happens a lot of the time. So I could see this going there. Look, you know how I feel about Gordon. I've made it no secret how I feel about some of the stuff he's been throwing down. But I will say this: if I've got to pick one of these guys to follow their lead, you have to hope that Gordon is a little bit more in touch and in tune with what's going on in the Reds front office right now than anybody covering the Red Sox. So,
Right.
and also, I kind of hope that Gordon's right, because the Reds have one shot to get this right, and it's going to take a lot of the prospect capital to go out and get Garrett Crochet, right? It's gonna take a lot. So if they were to do that, you can forget about trading for an outfielder also, I guess, unless this deal also includes an outfielder coming back, which would be,
it would have to be Luis Robert.
And it would have to be Luis Robert, and it would have to be a huge trade package. So for me, I hope the Reds are out on this. I think they've done enough with the starting rotation. And again, I know you can never have enough pitching. I hear you guys, but someone's got to play in the outfield. So I think they've done enough with the starting pitchers.
We've touched on this a little bit, and we'll talk more about this as the week goes along. But Roki Sasaki from Japan was officially posted to major league teams on Monday. So he is available, and he is young enough that he's not going to make a gajillion billion dollars. It is by rule that he has to make the league minimum as a minor league signing, and then he can work his way to the major leagues and stuff like that. So he would be available to the Reds, but he's available to all 30 teams. But again, that could be a nice way of not having to give up prospect capital, but still adding to your starting pitching depth. Could be interesting to see if they go after Roki Sasaki. I don't think they're among the favorites, though, to land him. But look, there are so many rumors flying around, and we will continue to keep you up to date every single day. Trade rumors, free agent rumors, all the rumors right here on Locked On Reds.
All right, Jeff, listen, they have the prospect capital. They need to get a deal done. Nick Krall needs to be smart. But listen to this. Terry Francona has a plan. He has a plan for those starting pitchers. And Jeff, I think you're kind of fired up about this. We're going to talk about what it is coming up next.
There's never a wrong time during any sports season to get a big return over at FanDuel, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. You don't have to be like that one guy. I remember hearing that there was a guy that bet $3 million on a game yesterday on the Eagles to beat the Panthers. That was crazy talk. You don't have to bet that. You know, just put $5 down. That's all you got to do. Plus, you can check out baseball futures. There's the NL pennant, the future for the NL pennant. The Reds odds actually got longer since Juan Soto went to the Mets. They are now 40-1 to win the National League. Look, they're going to get better, and Terry Francona is going to make them better. So that just seems juicy to me. I'm throwing a couple of bucks on that. Trust me, you should do it too over at FanDuel.com. Get a big payday today on your sports knowledge over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. They are an official sponsor of the NFL.
If you can't watch us here on YouTube, and thanks for being here, watching us and listening to us, you can take us on the road with you. You can take us to the gym, take us in the car, take us for a walk. The audio feed is available everywhere you get your podcasts. And if you're on a podcast platform that we're not, reach out to Jeff. He can probably make it happen for you. All right, Jeff. Terry Francona has said some things. You caught an interview that he did middle of last week, and it has you kind of fired up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I don't want to be dramatic or anything, but I think I'd fall on a grenade for Terry Francona. He said some amazing things, and it was on his it was the Reds Hot Stove League show. he made an appearance with Tommy Thrall and Jim Day last week. And he got really specific about some of the ideas that they were talking about. They had their first coaches meeting. So Derek Johnson, you had Chris Faleka, all the different coaches were meeting together and talking about things, Brad Mills and everybody there. And they were starting to plan, starting to get some player plans in place and what they were looking at and all this other stuff. And he said, and this is not a generalization, this is word for word, Terry Francona said on the Hot Stove League show, he said, DJ and I are on the same page that each starting pitcher will be stretched out to 100 pitches by the end of spring training this year. And I just got so many goosebumps reading that again. I got so many goosebumps when I heard that, because how many years now? How many years has it been opening day? And whoever the opening day starter was, whether it was Hunter Green or Frankie Montas or whoever, we were always hearing, well, they're only going to go about 4, maybe 5 innings if everything goes perfect, because they're not stretched out enough. They're not, they're not in midseason form. That we're just starting them out, getting them ready. Terry Francona is like, no, we're going to be ready to hit the ground running on day 1, and I am here for it.
This is a very nice change of pace. It's very refreshing. And it really makes me wonder more and more and more about just how loosey-goosey David Bell was running things. Right? Because the more that we hear about the changes they're going to implement is the more that they're going to go to a old school philosophy of operation. And, I remember in years past, the pitching staff was ready to go on opening day. And there was a little room to maneuver. There was, maybe 10% more they needed to get once the season started, but they were nearly there. And in the last several years with David Bell, it definitely did not feel like the pitching staff was ready to rock and roll. Many people questioned Derek Johnson, right? We've heard it. We've seen it in the comment sections. We've heard it when we've been out and about, people questioning whether or not Derek Johnson really was this pitching guru that everybody wants to make him out to be. And we've always thought that he kind of was that guy. But in the last couple of years, I've wondered to myself, if he wasn't being reined in a little bit. And I think that this kind of answers that question. If Derek Johnson's coming out and saying, no, I want this too, we're on the same page. That means somebody's been telling him not to do that for the last several years. Was that David Bell? Is that a philosophy change from Nick Krall in the front office? I don't know, but I'm here for it, because clearly what they've been doing hasn't been enough to get them over the hump. They've addressed this starting pitcher group. They've gone out and spent a lot of money between bringing Nick Martinez back and bringing in Singer by trade, right? So those two things, they've addressed an issue, and now they're ready to implement the plan. I like this. I think this is good timing. I think they've got a guy that pitched 32 starts, 170 plus innings last year, that's going to be ready to rock and roll. Hunter Green turned a corner, going to be ready to rock and roll. I'm excited about this.
And I think too that this means we are going to know more about our pitching staff throughout spring training. And while that's not like a necessity, it's important. Because it kind of felt like, especially for the first week and a half to 2 weeks of spring training games through the David Bell era, whenever there was a starting pitcher going, we couldn't know anything about him, because he was going to pitch 2 innings and then he was going to get pulled. And that's kind of how it felt like the entirety of getting ready for the season went for the entire pitching staff, is that, well, we don't want you to go too hard, too fast. And while I'm not saying, Terry Francona didn't come out and say, our opening day starter is going to pitch a complete game. He just said he's going to have a full workload. He's going to have his full range of abilities at his disposal on opening day. And it never felt like that was the case. If it was Hunter Green, you remember 2 years ago, Hunter Green against the Pirates didn't even go 4 innings because he had thrown a decent amount of pitches early on, but he was approaching the 80 pitch mark. And they're like, oh no, they got to take him out now. He's up to 80 pitches. That's it? That's all he's getting? Terry Francona says, he's going to throw some more. And he even kind of expounded on that, as they were talking more and more, Jim Day kind of followed up with that. And they said, so what's that mean throughout the season? What's your philosophy on that? And he's like, look, if our pitcher is in a position to get us a win and it feels like he is still going, I don't want him looking over his shoulder, thinking that the bullpen's going to get ready because he's hit a certain point. I want him to go out there and get 3 outs, and that's all he's worried about. I think that, again, kind of to your point, which you said a few moments ago, this gives us a peek back at the previous regime, that maybe there was a agreed upon like amount of pitches, or a agreed upon like time that a pitcher was going to be out on the mound. And regardless of how well he was doing, he had it in the back of his mind, bullpen's going to be up soon. And so that probably changes how he pitches. Terry Francona doesn't want his guys worrying about that.
Well, I know this, Jeff. I am super excited about the new era of the Cincinnati Reds. I can't wait for this team to get on the field. And given what's happened with the other professional sports team there in Cincinnati, opening day can't get here fast enough. And that is where we're going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen every day. Every dayers, go make the Locked On MLB podcast your second listen. Our buddy Sully, Paul Francis Sullivan, has a tremendous blend of humor and baseball knowledge on a national level that you're really going to want to go check out. I am sure he has some very interesting things to say about the near billion-dollar man in Juan Soto. I look forward to hearing him cover the deferment Dodgers. I like that. We're going to do that from now on. The deferment Dodgers. You want to check out his show. The link for it is down in today's episode description. You don't even have to go search for it. Locked On MLB is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jeff, get us out of here.
Thanks, everybody, for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. We're going to be with you all week long throughout the winter meetings. All the rumors, we will be on top of those because we are Locked On Reds every single day. Maybe not fall on a grenade, and maybe I'd catch a grenade and then like try to throw it back.
Well, I've seen your coordination. You're not catching nothing.